Hollywood's golden age wasn't just about glamorous premieres and million-dollar contracts.
Egos clashed like thunder, and two of the biggest names in cinema, John Wayne and Kirk Douglas, had a legendary confrontation that would become the stuff of movie set folklore. Picture this: a dusty western set in the scorching California desert, cameras ready to roll, crew members sweating under the relentless sun, and one very punctual leading man checking his watch for the 100th time. John Wayne, known for his iron discipline and military-like punctuality, was about to teach Kirk Douglas a lesson in professionalism that nobody on that set would ever forget. The year was shaping up to be pivotal for both actors. Wayne had already cemented his reputation as Hollywood's ultimate cowboy, a man who treated film sets like battlegrounds where every minute mattered. His work ethic was legendary, arriving before dawn, knowing every line perfectly, and expecting the same commitment from everyone around him. Kirk Douglas brought something entirely different to the table. He was the new generation of actor, intense, method-driven, and sometimes unpredictable. His performances burned with an energy that captivated audiences, but his approach to time didn't always align with old Hollywood's rigid standards. When these two powerhouses signed on to the same production, industry insiders whispered about potential fireworks. They weren't wrong. Production day 17 started like any other. The assistant director had called for a 6 a.m. assembly, with cameras scheduled to capture the crucial confrontation scene by 7:30. Wayne arrived at 5:15, as always, already in costume and makeup. He used the quiet morning hours to walk through his blocking, feel the space, and prepare mentally for the emotional demands of the scene. 6 o'clock came and went. The crew assembled, equipment hummed to life, but Kirk Douglas's trailer remained dark and silent. 6:30 passed. Wayne's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a tell that the crew had learned to recognize as a warning sign. By 7 o'clock, with the perfect morning light beginning to fade and expensive equipment idling, Duke's patience had evaporated like water on hot sand. But instead of the explosion everyone expected, something far more calculating took shape behind those steely eyes. Wayne pulled the director aside, speaking in low tones that carried an unmistakable edge of determination. Whatever he proposed made the director's eyes widen, then a slow smile spread across his face. Within minutes, a conspiracy was born, one that would involve nearly every person on that set. The cinematographer adjusted cameras, the sound engineer repositioned microphones, supporting actors received whispered instructions. Everyone moved with purpose, reimagining the day's shoot around Douglas's absence. When Kirk Douglas finally sauntered onto set at 8:45, offering a casual apology about traffic and a late breakfast meeting, he expected the usual Hollywood forgiveness. Stars were allowed their eccentricities after all. What he encountered instead stopped him cold. The set was completely transformed. Where his character's pivotal confrontation scene should have dominated the schedule, Wayne had orchestrated something entirely different. Every single shot had been redesigned to focus exclusively on Duke's character, with Douglas's role reduced to barely visible background reactions. "We lost a good light waiting," Wayne explained with devastating politeness, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent set. "So we adapted. Your close-ups, we'll shoot those next week when we're doing pickups. Today you'll be in frame, but way back there." He pointed to a position so far from the camera that Douglas would be barely distinguishable from the extras. The script's dramatic two-person showdown, the scene Douglas had been preparing for weeks, had been completely reimagined as Wayne's solo moment. The director backed this new vision entirely, explaining how they'd salvage the day by focusing on what they could capture with the actors actually present. Kirk Douglas stood there, full costume and makeup applied, facing a choice. He could explode, storm off, and prove Wayne's point about unprofessionalism. Or he could take his medicine and spend the day as expensive background decoration. He chose the latter, but the fury radiating off him was palpable. For 8 grueling hours, one of Hollywood's brightest stars stood in the background of shots where you'd need binoculars to identify him. Every time he shifted his weight or adjusted his stance hoping to catch more screen time, Wayne would call for another take, adjusting his own performance to ensure the camera never drifted toward Douglas. The crew watched in fascinated silence. Some felt sympathy for Douglas's predicament, others admired Wayne's ruthless efficiency in handling what could have been a production-killing confrontation. Everyone understood they were witnessing a power play for the ages, Word spread through Hollywood faster than wildfire through dry brush. At lunch tables across studio lots, the story circulated with varying degrees of embellishment. Some versions had Douglas reduced to tears. Others claimed Wayne never spoke to him again. The truth was somehow both simpler and more profound. Wayne had made his point without raising his voice, throwing a tantrum, or causing production delays. He'd turned Douglas's lateness into a teaching moment that cost the younger actor nothing except his pride and one day of meaningful screen time. Other directors took notice. If John Wayne could enforce professionalism this creatively, maybe they could too. The incident became a cautionary tale whispered to young actors arriving in Hollywood with more talent than discipline. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. When production wrapped and both actors attended the premiere months later, Kirk Douglas sought Wayne out during the reception. What happened next surprised everyone who'd heard about their confrontation. Douglas extended his hand, not with resentment, but with genuine respect. "You were right," he reportedly said. "I learned more from that day than any acting coach ever taught me." Wayne's response was characteristically direct. Talent opens doors in this business, but showing up opens them wider. They never became best friends, but a mutual professional respect developed that lasted years. Douglas adopted Wayne's punctuality standards, arriving early to every subsequent set. The lesson had stuck. This confrontation illuminates something crucial about the studio system's golden age. Power on film sets wasn't just about star billing or salary negotiations. It was about who commanded respect through their work ethic and professional standards. Wayne represented the old guard's values: discipline, punctuality, and viewing filmmaking as serious business, deserving military-like commitment. Douglas embodied the emerging method acting movement, where emotional truth sometimes trumped logistical convenience. Their clash wasn't just personal, it represented two philosophies of what it meant to be a professional actor colliding head-on. Lost in the dramatic elements of this story is a practical reality. Film production burns money like oxygen in a fire. Every minute of delay costs thousands of dollars in crew wages, equipment rental, location fees, and lost schedule time. When Douglas arrived nearly 3 hours late, he didn't just inconvenience John Wayne. He wasted the time of dozens of crew members who'd risen before dawn to be ready. He jeopardized the production schedule that coordinators had spent weeks perfecting. He risked losing the perfect natural lighting that cinematographers depend on for visual continuity. Wayne's response, while dramatic, actually saved the production from a total loss. By pivoting to shots they could accomplish with available actors, he transformed potential disaster into usable footage. His revenge served production needs while simultaneously teaching Douglas an unforgettable lesson. What makes this incident particularly instructive is how Wayne led without lecturing. He could have berated Douglas publicly, demanded apologies, or complained to producers. Instead, he demonstrated through direct action exactly why punctuality mattered. Every person on that set understood the lesson immediately. The camera operator saw how time windows close. The director learned how one person's lateness cascades through entire productions. Supporting actors recognized how star behavior sets cultural expectations for everyone. Douglas himself experienced the most powerful teacher of all: natural consequences. He wasn't fired or fined or publicly shamed. He simply faced the logical result of his choices being deprioritized in favor of collaborators who showed up ready to work. This confrontation marked an interesting moment in Hollywood's evolution. Wayne represented the studio system's last generation, where stars were built through years of consistent work and iron discipline. Douglas was part of the new wave, where intensity and dramatic brilliance could sometimes override traditional professional standards. Neither approach was entirely wrong. Douglas's passion produced some of cinema's most memorable performances. Wayne's discipline created reliable excellence across decades of work. But on that particular day, in that specific circumstance, discipline won decisively. Strip away the glamour and famous names, and this story offers universal truths about professional collaboration. Whether you're working on a film set, in an office, or building a business, certain principles hold firm. Time is the one truly non-renewable resource. When you waste someone else's time, you're stealing something they can never recover. The crew members who arrived at dawn didn't get those morning hours back. The production budget didn't magically refund the money burned during Douglas's absence. Reputation is built through consistent behavior, not isolated brilliance. Douglas was undeniably talented, but talent doesn't excuse disrespect for others' commitments. Wayne's reputation for reliability made his occasional demands for excellence feel reasonable rather than tyrannical. Leadership doesn't always require authority, sometimes it just requires clarity. Wayne wasn't technically Douglas's boss, but he commanded the situation through certainty of purpose and willingness to back words with action. This incident didn't happen in isolation. Hollywood's golden age was filled with similar confrontations as massive egos collided on confined sets. But most of these clashes resulted in shouting matches, production shutdowns, or actors refusing to work together. What distinguished Wayne's approach was its precision. He didn't let emotion drive his response. He calculated exactly how to make his point while still delivering value to the production. That combination of principle and pragmatism defined his decades-long career. Directors loved working with Wayne not because he was easiest to manage, he could be demanding and particular, but because they trusted him to prioritize the project over his ego. This incident reinforced that reputation while simultaneously challenging Douglas to rise to similar standards. The real triumph of this story isn't Wayne's clever revenge, it's Douglas's response to it. Lesser actors might have nursed grudges or blamed others for their humiliation. Douglas looked in the mirror and recognized a genuine weakness in his professional approach. His subsequent career demonstrated the lesson's impact. He became known not just for intense performances, but for treating productions with the respect they deserved. Other actors noticed the change, and Douglas's reputation evolved from difficult genius to committed professional. Years later, Douglas would reference that day in interviews, framing it as one of his most important learning experiences. The humiliation that could have destroyed a professional relationship instead forged one built on honest standards and mutual respect. Decades after both actors have passed, this confrontation remains part of Hollywood lore because it captures something essential about professionalism, accountability, and how power dynamics actually work when people of genuine talent collide. It's the perfect story because nobody is entirely wrong or completely right. Douglas deserved to be challenged for his lateness. Wayne's response, while effective, bordered on public humiliation. The lesson was valid, but the method was harsh. Real life rarely offers clean heroes and villains. Sometimes it delivers complicated situations where talented people make mistakes, face consequences, learn lessons, and grow stronger. That's what happened on that dusty Western set when patience ran out and creativity replaced confrontation. The cameras eventually stopped rolling on that production. Both actors moved on to other projects, other challenges, other triumphs. But the lesson remained, passed down through generations of filmmakers, as a reminder that in collaborative arts, showing up matters just as much as showing off. In the end, perhaps that's the real reason this story refuses to fade. It reminds us that excellence requires more than talent. It demands respect for the process and the people who make magic possible, one punctual morning at a time.